The Tale of the Painter. Kose Hirotaka's return to secular life. Once upon a time, during the reign of the Ichijo-in, there was a painter named Kose Hirotaka. He was unmatched in skill, both in the past and present, and had no equal. Despite his talent, Hirotaka had a strong desire for spiritual enlightenment. However, he suffered from a severe illness that troubled him day by day. Disillusioned with the world, he decided to become a monk. After some time, his health improved. Upon hearing this, the court decided it is not inappropriate for a monk to paint, but it would be more convenient for him to serve at the imperial painting studio. Therefore, he should promptly return to secular life. They summoned him, informing him that he should return to lay status. Hirotaka, though deeply saddened by this turn of events, had no choice but to comply with the imperial decree. In the meantime, the governor of Omi, Shax Lake, took Hirotaka under his wing and allowed his hair to grow. The governor confined him to a place in Higashiyama, where he was to stay hidden and let his hair grow. During this time, Hirotaka, secluded in a new hall, met no one. He took to painting hell scenes on the wall behind the hall, expressing his feelings as he wished. These paintings remain to this day, and countless people visit to see them, describing them as subtle and remarkable. After some time, Hirotaka lived for many years in secular life, serving the court. His paintings on sliding screens and papers can be found in various esteemed locations. There is a particular screen painted by Hirotaka that has become a treasured item, brought out during grand feasts and for special guests. Thus, the legacy of Kose Hirotaka, a master painter who transitioned between the sacred and secular worlds, continues to be celebrated. The Tale of the Lowly Secretary of the Ōkura Ministry. Once upon a time, there was a lowly secretary in the Ōkura ministry named Takasuke from Muneyaka. When he traveled, he rode a chestnut-colored horse with long hair, dressed in outer garments adorned with fabric. Although he was considered lowly, his demeanor and appearance were not demeaning at all. His home was located in Nishikyo, west of Horikawa and north of the Konoe Gate, near the house of Hachinoi. To the south was the Konoe Gate, in front of which he built a Tang-style gatehouse. East of this gate, he constructed a modest 7-room dwelling. He surrounded the inner area with a decorative fence and built a small 5-room sleeping chamber inside, where he had his 2 daughters reside. This chamber had a distinctive design with curtains raised. In winter, he hung a rustic wooden screen, and in summer, he used a lighter fabric. In front of it were decorative lacquered trays filled with combs. He had about 20 attendants, all dressed in fine garments, with 10 assigned to each daughter, and 4 young boys always clad in short-sleeved shirts, with 2 serving each daughter. These attendants and boys were all daughters of suitable people who had been raised in proper households, but were now without parents and needed help, so he brought them in as if stealing them away, and none of them were inferior in ability or appearance. The lower servants and those of lesser status were carefully selected based on their appearance and manner, so there were no unacceptable individuals among them. The furnishings in the attendants' chambers, such as screens, curtains, and tatami mats, rivaled those of the palace. Depending on the season and occasion, they wore layered clothing, skillfully chosen and changed. The clothing for the ladies and gentlemen was selected from fine silk and patterned fabrics. They inquired about the best dyes and wove them accordingly, making the silk appear luminous and vibrant. When dining, they arranged everything on elegant silver dishes. The young nobles, having fallen from grace, were made to serve in various roles, adorned in diverse ways. Overall, their appearance was exceptionally refined, befitting a truly noble individual. While Takasuke presented himself with great dignity when traveling, when he visited his daughters, he donned a brocade kimono and pants dyed with grape colors, over which he wore a red robe and burned fragrant incense. His wife, initially dressed in a simple sliding door garment, changed into elaborately sewn clothing to visit their daughters. In every way possible, he strove to provide them with the best. During this time, a monk named Kanchu, having built a temple for worship, was approached by Takasuke, who humbly requested, "Since the temple's offerings are exceedingly precious, I wish for the lowly children to witness such grandeur." To which the monk replied, "That is indeed commendable. However, do arrange for the displays to be set up properly." Takasuke was greatly pleased by this and returned. As Takasuke had served this monk for many years, he made arrangements to show his daughters the splendid offerings during the temple ceremonies. The following day, as the temple service approached, he prepared 2 carts and 2 flat-bottomed boats loaded with offerings, which he transported to the edge of the pond. The monk asked, "From where have you brought this?" And Takasuke replied, "It is the boat of the secretary from the Ōkura ministry." The monk thought, what might such a vessel be used for? But because it was already prepared, he merely assumed it was for the ceremony. At dawn, on a new cart, he sent his daughters out, followed by about 10 elegantly dressed attendants, all carrying torches in front of them. When everyone boarded the boats, they revealed their garments, which sparkled with colors too numerous to describe. The scene radiated a captivating beauty. The boys, dressed in barbarian-style clothing, rowed the 2 boats with colorful oars. To the south of the pond, they set up a flat covering for the ladies to sit under. As dawn broke on the morning of the offering, nobles, court officials, and invited monks all arrived. As the 2 boats circled over the pond, adorned with large drums, bells, stages, and silk banners, their splendor was breathtaking. Observing the magnificence of the boats, the colorful garments cascading like a waterfall, the nobles questioned, "Whose ladies are those?" But the monk, maintaining silence, simply said, "Ah, they belong to the secretary," leaving the question unanswered. Consequently, the curiosity about the identity of those ladies remained unresolved. In the following days, Takasuke continued to present such splendor to his daughters, yet no one knew their true identity. By doing so, he elevated their status beyond that of ordinary people, leading many nobles and officers to comment, they should become a son-in-law. However, Takasuke found this unsettling and refused even to entertain the notion. He remarked, "Even if I am humble, I will present someone worthy to be seen. I will not allow my daughters to associate with those of lesser status, even if they were the sons of powerful figures from Omi or Harima." He remained uninterested in any suitors while his parents passed away, leaving behind an elder brother who insisted, "I alone shall take the wealth." Because the daughters were unaware of their situation, all servants and attendants abandoned them, leading to a time when the 2 daughters fell into despair and became so weakened that they could not eat, eventually succumbing without any mourners. Thus, the story has been passed down, recounting how even among the lowly, there were those with great aspirations. It is said that even those with lofty ideals, if poor and without wealth, could see their daughters suffer, yet still could not improve their circumstances. Reflecting on this, it is evident that Takasuke was a person of great virtue, as it was only because he had earned the favor of his superiors that he was able to behave in such a manner. Title: The Curious Incident of the Old Man at the Kamo Festival. Once upon a time, on the day of the Kamo Festival, signs were erected at Ichijo and Higashi no Doin from dawn. The sign read, "This is the place where the old man will watch. No one is to stand here." Seeing this sign, people dared not approach. This sign was erected for the viewing of Emperor Yosei, they all thought, and thus no one came closer. Moreover, no carriages stood near the sign. Eventually, as things progressed, an old man dressed in pale yellow came into view, looking up and down while holding a large fan. He stood quietly by the sign, observing the proceedings. Once the events concluded, he returned home. At this, people wondered, how strange that the Emperor Yosei would not be watching the events as expected. What could be the reason for his absence? It's peculiar that he would set up a sign and not attend. As people exchanged these thoughts, one remarked, "The demeanor of this old man observing seems suspicious. Could it be that he has placed the sign to make it seem as though it was set by the emperor, claiming, 'I will watch from here'?" Various speculations arose among the crowd. Meanwhile, Emperor Yosei heard about the situation and commanded, "Summon that old man." When the old man was found at the western Hachijo, the emperor dispatched an attendant to bring him. When the old man arrived, the attendant said, Why did you set up a sign saying it was erected by the emperor on Ichijo Street, scaring people away to watch with a smug face?" The old man was questioned. "Explain yourself." He replied, "It is true that I set up the sign, but I never wrote that it was erected by the emperor. I am already 80 years old and have no desire to watch events. My grandson, who is currently working as a minor official in the treasury, expressed a strong wish to see this year's festival. I thought he would want to go out and see it. However, being old, I feared being trampled to death in a crowd would be of no benefit, so I thought it best to stand where people would not come near and watch peacefully. Thus, I set up the sign. Hearing this, Emperor Yosei remarked, "This old man has indeed thoughtfully erected the sign. He must be solely concerned with seeing his grandson. How reasonable. He is certainly a wise man." The emperor then commanded, "Quickly return home." The old man, looking quite pleased with himself, went home and told his wife, "Surely my actions were not ill-advised. The emperor seems to appreciate it." However, the people did not accept this gratitude. They only commented, "The old man's desire to see his grandson is quite reasonable, and thus this tale has been passed down." Title: The Tale of Shikie, the Right Junior Secretary and the Woman Who Died. Once upon a time, there was a man named Fujiwara no Shiki, who held the position of Right Junior Secretary. He had a woman with whom he shared mutual affection and visited often. The woman, however, had a poor disposition. She would dwell on distant matters, and though Shiki tried to avoid appearing indifferent to her by maintaining his presence, he was often occupied with official duties. There were even nights when he was detained by frivolous women, making his visits less frequent. The woman, not yet accustomed to such neglect, took these changes to heart and never showed signs of relaxing her mind. As the distance between them gradually grew, they became more estranged, though without explicit ill will. In time, they drifted apart completely. About a year and a half later, Shiki was passing by the woman's house when a servant, returning from outside, entered and remarked, "Lord Shiki just passed by. If only he had stopped in, it would have been such a touching reunion." The woman, upon hearing this, sent someone to call him. "There is something I must say. Could you please come in, even just briefly?" When Shiki heard this, memories of her came flooding back. He sent a response and entered the house. Inside, the woman sat facing a chest of scriptures, wearing clean robes and a pristine red hakama. She looked composed, and her eyes, forehead, and mouth seemed unusually calm and pleasant, as if she had not hastily arranged herself for this occasion. Seeing her like this, Shiki thought, "Why did I not visit sooner?" He felt a growing regret. As he listened to her recite the scriptures, he wished to interrupt and lie down beside her, but after so long apart, he felt it inappropriate and hesitated. They exchanged some words, but the woman gave no responses. She continued reading until she reached the seventh scroll, specifically the Yakushobon section, which she read and reread several times. Shiki, feeling impatient, said, "Hurry and finish. There is much we need to discuss." She read the line, "At the time of death, one is immediately reborn in the pure land of ultimate bliss, surrounded by Amida Buddha and the great bodhisattvas, seated upon a lotus throne," and tears began to fall from her eyes. Shiki, startled, remarked, "Ah, how strange. Have you taken on the heart of a nun like one from Nara?" The woman, with her tearful eyes, looked at him, her face as if dampened by frost or dew. He found it unsettling and wondered what could have made her so indifferent, thinking, how could she have felt neglected all this time? Unable to bear it any longer, he thought, if I never see her again after today, what kind of regret will I carry? He felt an intense frustration, but as he wrestled with his emotions, the woman finished reading the scriptures. She then clasped her amber rosary, lost in prayer for a while. When she finally looked up, her expression suddenly changed in a disturbing way. Shiki wondered, "What is this?" The woman then said, "I called you because I wanted to see you one last time. This is the end." And with those words, she died. Shiki was struck with disbelief. "What is this?" he exclaimed, calling for someone to come. But nobody came immediately. Eventually, a mature servant arrived and, seeing Shiki there, said, "How strange! What has happened here?" The servant was naturally confused. Before they could fully understand what had happened, the woman's life had completely ended, her hair barely a thread from being severed. It was unthinkable for Shiki to stay in such a place of defilement, yet the image of her face lingered in his mind, filling him with sorrow and despair. From that point on, Shiki fell ill and before long passed away. People said, could it be that he was possessed by the woman's spirit? Since the woman had spent her final moments reciting the Lotus Sutra, people thought, surely she will find happiness in the next world. But others believed, having seen Shikie, she must have harbored deep resentment, and so whatever peace she found may have been tainted by sin. Thus, the story has been passed down. Title: The Tale of the Lamp's Shadow and the Woman Who Died. Once upon a time, there was a young lady in waiting who served under one of the emperor's consorts. She was called Konochujo no Kimi. She was beautiful in both appearance and demeanor, and her kind-hearted nature made her well liked by her fellow attendants, who thought highly of her. Though she had no particular lover, the regional governor of Mino, Fujiwara no Takatsune, would visit her from time to time. One evening, Konochujo was in attendance at the consort's residence, wearing a light-colored robe layered with a red undergarment. While she stood there in the room, as dusk fell and a lamp was lit in offering to the consort, the light cast a shadow of Konochujo on the wall. The shadow, with its elegant appearance, looked identical to her in every way, from the way she covered her mouth to the shape of her eyes, forehead, and the hair cascading down her back. When the other ladies in waiting saw this, they exclaimed in surprise, "How uncanny! It's as if the shadow were alive." They were fascinated and gathered around, chatting excitedly. However, none of the older or more experienced women present seemed to recognize the deeper significance of what they were witnessing, and they simply enjoyed the spectacle. After some time, they brushed the shadow off the wall. Later, when they told Konochujo what had happened, she replied, "How foolish and clumsy I must have seemed, lingering there like some lowly figure. It's embarrassing to think I was so openly observed without realizing it." Not long after, some of the older ladies heard of the incident and remarked, "That shadow was a sign of something ominous. How careless of you all to simply brush it off without informing her." But nothing more came of it, and the matter was forgotten. About 20 days later, Konochujo fell ill with what seemed like a cold. She lay bedridden for 2 or 3 days, eventually leaving the palace and returning to her family home saying she was feeling unwell. Fujiwara no Takatsune, unaware of her illness, visited the consort's residence shortly afterward. When he asked about Konochujo, a maidservant replied she just left for her family home. Takatsune then hurried to her house, arriving late in the evening, with the moon about 7 or 8 days past full, now sinking in the western sky. When Takatsune reached the house, he saw Konochujo emerging through the western-facing sliding door. He opened the door and entered, thinking he would stay only briefly to see her and then leave by dawn. However, upon seeing Konochujo, looking even more delicate than usual, he felt a deep sense of pity for her. Konochujo, too, appeared weak and forlorn, with an air of melancholy about her. Takatsune, though initially planning to leave, couldn't bring himself to go. He stayed the night, and as dawn approached, he felt a sense of longing as he prepared to leave. Returning home, Takatsune couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He quickly wrote a letter expressing his concern and saying, "I'll be back soon to check on you," and sent it to her. As he anxiously awaited her reply, a messenger soon arrived. Eagerly, he opened the letter only to find that it contained nothing but the words Toribeyama, a place associated with burial. Shocked and saddened, Takatsune placed the letter close to his chest, tucked inside his robe, and left to go about his day. Throughout the day, he kept taking out the letter, thinking about her as he carried out his duties. Though there were other matters that required his attention, Takatsune, overcome by his yearning for Konochujo, hurried back to the capital. Upon arriving at her house, he immediately went inside, only to be met by a servant who told him, "She passed away last night, and we buried her in the Toribeno cemetery." Hearing this, Takatsune's grief was beyond words. This was the truth of what had happened. Thus it is said that if a shadow cast by fire takes on the form of a person, it must be brushed away carefully, lest something fatal befall the one whose shadow it was. Additionally, prayers should be performed with care, because the women in this story did not understand the gravity of what they saw and brushed the shadow away without proper rites. Konochujo's life was tragically cut short. Thus, the story has been passed down.